Uncle keeps bringing up my past mistakes, so I exposed his cheating to my aunt and then to everyone. Hey everyone, I've been lurking here for a while, but I finally decided to share my story. It's a bit long, so bear with me. So, my family is pretty close-knit. We have family gatherings almost every month, and everyone shows up. But there's this one person who always manages to make things unbearable, my uncle. This guy never misses a chance to bring up every stupid thing I've ever done. You know, typical stuff like sneaking out as a teen, failing a college class, or even the time I broke my mom's favorite vase. Every single time. You remember that time you failed your math exam? Bet your mom was proud. He'd say with that annoying smirk. It wasn't just a passing comment. It was a constant barrage. It felt like he lived to humiliate me. At first, I tried to laugh it off, but it got under my skin. My parents told me to let it go, saying he's just teasing, but it felt personal. It felt like he was trying to keep me in my place. I started dreading family gatherings, knowing I'd have to sit through his jabs. Then, one day, I heard a piece of gossip from my cousin. Apparently, my uncle had been cheating on my aunt for years. I didn't want to believe it, but the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. I didn't say anything at first. I mean, it wasn't my business, right? But after another humiliating family dinner, I snapped. Last Thanksgiving was the worst. Everyone was there, and things were going fine, until my uncle started up again. He brought up the time I got drunk at a family wedding and threw up in the bushes. Everyone laughed, but it wasn't funny to me. I could feel my blood boiling. I glanced at my mom, hoping she'd say something, but she just gave me that let it go look. Why do you always have to bring up the past? I finally snapped. The room got quiet. My uncle looked at me surprised. Oh, come on, it's just a joke. Don't be so sensitive, he said, waving it off. I'm tired of your jokes, I said, standing up. My heart was pounding. You think it's funny to humiliate me? Maybe we should talk about your mistakes, huh? My uncle's face went pale. What are you talking about? You know exactly what I'm talking about, I shot back. Your little side activities that everyone knows about. Maybe it's time Auntie knows too. The room was dead silent. My aunt looked confused. What's going on? She asked. Ask your husband, I said, glaring at him. Ask him about the other woman. The room exploded. My aunt started crying, demanding answers. My uncle tried to deny it at first, but it was clear he was lying. He eventually admitted to the affair, saying it was a mistake, blah, blah, blah. But the damage was done. My aunt left the room in tears, and my uncle followed her, trying to explain. The rest of the family just stared at me. My mom looked like she wanted to disappear. My dad shook his head, but I couldn't tell if he was disappointed or just shocked. Why did you do that? My cousin whispered. Because he deserved it, I said, still shaking with anger. He's been making my life hell for years. It's about time he got a taste of his own medicine. The rest of the evening was awkward, to say the least. People started leaving early, and I could feel the judgmental looks from some of my relatives. But I didn't care. I felt liberated. The next few weeks were tense. My aunt moved out and stayed with a friend. She wasn't speaking to my uncle, and family gatherings were pretty much canceled. My mom was furious with me. You had no right to air our dirty laundry like that, she yelled. You've torn this family apart. What about him? I shouted back. He's been tearing me apart for years and no one cared. You could have handled it differently, she said, shaking her head. How? I demanded. How else was I supposed to get him to stop? She didn't have an answer. I started getting messages from family members. Some supported me, saying he deserved it. Others told me I went too far. But the best part? My uncle. He tried to call me several times, but I ignored him. He even showed up at my apartment once, demanding to talk. I told him to fuck off and slammed the door in his face. Eventually, my aunt decided to file for divorce. She thanked me for telling her the truth, even if it was in such a public way. My uncle moved out and went to stay with his brother. Family gatherings became a lot smaller, and I didn't see him for months. Then, one day, I got a call from my dad. He wanted to meet for coffee. I was nervous, thinking he was going to lay into me about what I'd done. But when I got there, He just looked sad. "Your uncle's been in an accident," he said quietly. "He's in the hospital." I felt a pang of guilt. Despite everything, he was still family. I went to see him, and he looked so weak lying there. We talked, and for the first time he apologized. He admitted he was wrong to treat me the way he did, and that he deserved what happened. "I'm sorry," he said, tears in his eyes. "I've been a terrible person." "I'm sorry too," I said, "but you really hurt me." We hugged, and for the first time in years, I felt like we might actually be able to move on.